Her true story from Alaska. My son slapped me and said, "This isn't your home anymore, get out." After my husband's funeral. So I did. And took the mortgage with me. By morning, the locks worked. But the bank didn't. "This isn't your home anymore, get out." The words hit harder than the slap that followed. My son's hand cracked across my face with a force I never imagined he was capable of. Not physically, and certainly not emotionally, not toward me. But there it was. In the living room. Not 5 feet from the casket where his father still lay. Surrounded by wilting lilies and the low murmur of mourning relatives. My face burned. Not just from the impact, but from the betrayal. I said it clearly, didn't I? "Get out," he seethed, his voice no longer recognizable. It was cold, calculated. Behind him stood his wife, arms crossed, chin tilted up, a slight smirk playing on her lips. She had always thought the house was hers. She had always treated me like a temporary guest in my own home. I had given birth to this boy. I had held his hand when he cried over broken toys, over scraped knees, over his first heartbreak. I had fought with the school principal when he was wrongly blamed for something in 5th grade. I had worked double shifts to pay for his tuition when his father's job was cut. I had done all of it without expecting a single thank you. Now he was throwing me out. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The shock had built a wall inside me so thick that no tear could escape. I looked him straight in the eyes. He couldn't hold the stare for long. But I could. Because I wasn't just a grieving widow or a disrespected mother in that moment. I was something steadier. Something older. Something he had underestimated. I turned. I didn't say a word. My suitcase was still in the corner of the hallway. Barely unpacked from the hospital visit a week ago. My husband's final stay. I pulled it toward the door, my steps quiet on the hardwood floor we'd laid down together 37 years ago. I didn't take everything. Not my photo albums. Not the ceramic angel from my mother. Not even my favorite quilt, but I did take something they'd regret losing. I took the mortgage. The cold air slapped me again as I stepped outside. But it was kinder than my own son's hand. The sky was gray, and snow had just begun to fall in soft, drifting flakes. It clung to the folds of my black coat, but I didn't brush it away. It made me feel real. Allah. I walked down the driveway. Past the car my husband and I had paid off together. Past the roses we planted on our 20th anniversary. Past the wind chimes that used to sing when Andrew came home from school. No one followed me. No one stopped me, not even him. At the corner, I pulled out my phone and called for a taxi. While I waited, I sat on the bench outside the gas station. The teenage clerk inside peered through the window and came out. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked. I had baked him cookies one Christmas years ago. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just waiting for a ride." "Do you want to wait inside where it's warm?" I nodded. He didn't ask more. He didn't stare at the bruising that was already blooming across my cheek. The motel room smelled of bleach and sadness, but the heater worked, and the bed was clean. The receptionist didn't ask questions. She offered me a cup of tea and a blanket. I declined both. I stared at the ceiling for hours. I could still feel the sting. Not from the slap, but from his words. "This isn't your home anymore." I had scrubbed every inch of that house. Paid half of it, cooked in it, prayed in it, fought for it. It wasn't a house. It was a life, and now I was told to leave it behind, like it was a suitcase. But I hadn't told them everything. I hadn't told them that the mortgage wasn't just in my late husband's name. I hadn't told them that I was still the co-signier, the co-owner, the one whose name sat right there on the deed and the loan, because my husband had known. He had known what could happen. And in one of our last conversations, he had said something I thought I'd never need to remember. "If I go first," he said, his voice shaky, "don't tell Andrew about the documents. Not unless he hurts you." I had placed those documents in a safe deposit box at the bank, along with something else. A letter he wrote, a backup will, and a clause that would change everything. The next morning, I made my call, not to Andrew, to the bank. I requested that the automatic mortgage payments be stopped. I gave them my name, my ID, the account number. They verified it. "You're listed as a co-owner and co-borrower, ma'am. You can do that," the banker said. I said thank you. Then I hung up. By noon my son would find the locks changed, the door rekeyed. But by the end of the week, he'd get the real shock. When the bank called. And I would be far away by then, out hiding, just quiet. I had spent my whole life being quiet, now it was my silence that would speak the loudest. That house didn't fall from the sky. It wasn't some gift, it was built, brick by brick, check by check, sacrifice by sacrifice. In 1987, when the snow fell heavier than usual, and heating bills nearly ruined us, my husband and I signed the first mortgage papers. I still remember the ink smudging slightly from my nervous hands. I had insisted on being a co-owner, not because I didn't trust him, but because his credit at the time was a mess. He had just closed a failed auto repair business, and the banks had turned him away more than once. But I had steady work. For over a decade I'd been a medical clerk at the local clinic. Reliable income, clean credit. My name opened the door. My name got us the loan, and so my name went on the deed. We didn't talk about it much after that. He was proud but quiet about the arrangement. Still, when we planted our first hydrangeas in the front yard, he whispered, "We built this together, you and me." And we did. Every month we paid on time. Sometimes we skipped dinners out or Christmas presents. Sometimes we patched holes in the roof, ourselves, with duct tape and determination. But we never missed a payment. The bank sent statements in both our names. The mailbox always knew we were equals. But when my husband fell ill in 2012, everything changed. Suddenly, the strong man, who once lifted me over puddles, now struggled to lift a coffee mug. Medical bills mounted. Insurance barely scratched the surface. He couldn't work anymore, and Social Security was slow and stingy, so I took on more hours at the clinic, switched to night shifts, learned how to stretch a week's groceries from 2 bags. I even cleaned houses on weekends, wearing gloves to hide my cracked knuckles, but I never complained. Not to him, and never to Andrew, because Andrew had just started his own family. He was trying to build something too. I didn't want to burden him. I told him we were doing just fine, even when I counted pennies to fill the gas tank. When he asked why I looked tired all the time, I smiled and blamed it on age. He never asked more, and maybe that was my mistake. Maybe if I had let him see truly what I was doing, he might have respected me more. Or maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything at all, but I chose silence. I chose to protect him from the weight of what I carried, and now, years later, he threw me out of the very house my name had helped build. It wasn't just insulting, it was erasure. They thought it was theirs. They walked through its halls like kings and queens of something they didn't earn. His wife changed the curtains, repainted the living room, remodeled the kitchen, all without ever once asking me. She said it was her domain. I let her believe that. I didn't want to fight, I just wanted peace in my final years. I thought if I gave them space, they would give me respect. Instead, they gave me orders. I remember one evening just a few months ago, I was dusting the bookshelf when she said, "You really should ask before touching things. We're trying to keep the aesthetic consistent." It was my bookshelf. My books, even the shelf, had been built by my husband's hands. I went back to my room, shut the door, and cried quietly for the first time in a long time. Not because of her words, but because I saw what was coming. She was rewriting the narrative. And Andrew let her. He started calling it their house in conversations, stopped asking for my opinion, treated me like an extended guest, tolerated, but not welcomed. I watched it all, silently. I didn't push back. I didn't wave around documents or make scenes, but I never threw anything away. Every mortgage document, every payment slip, every copy of the deed, I kept them in a neat manila folder in my bottom drawer. And when my husband died, I took that folder and placed it in a safe deposit box at the bank, along with a backup copy of his will, and a letter he left for me, just in case. I had protected Andrew his whole life, but I had protected myself too. Now when they slammed that door in my face, they thought they were finally in control. They didn't know the history. They didn't know the house wasn't just wood and drywall and paint. It was names on paper, and one of those names was still mine. A week before he died, my husband called me into the bedroom while Andrew and his wife were out buying groceries. He was lying in bed, thinner than I had ever seen him, the curve of his bones showing through his flannel pajama top. But his eyes were sharper than they'd been in weeks. "Come sit," he said, patting the edge of the mattress. I sat. He reached into the drawer beside the bed and pulled out a small brown envelope. "Don't open it now," he said, placing it in my hands. "And don't tell Andrew it exists. Not unless..." He trailed off, coughing. Not unless wet, I asked gently. He looked at me for a long moment, then said, not unless he hurts you. I stared at him, confused. What do you mean, hurts me? I mean… He paused, collecting his breath. I've seen how he speaks to you sometimes, the way she treats you, and he lets her. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to talk about that, not with him in this condition. Not now. You're overthinking, I whispered. He's just stressed, but my husband shook his head. No. You've been too generous with your forgiveness. That's why I had the papers drafted. I had the lawyer include something. Just in case. Because if I go before you and they turn on you, I want you protected. I tightened my grip on the envelope. What's in here? A second will. A supplemental clause. It's notarized, it's legal. If Andrew ever insults, abuses, or evicts you from this home, he loses all claim. Every penny, every title, every right. My hands trembled. He continued. I didn't want it to come to that, but I needed to know that if I'm not around, you still have some control, some justice. I nodded, eyes burning. I leaned forward and kissed his forehead. Thank you, I said, voice breaking. But I hope I never have to use it. He smiled faintly. Me too. He died 5 days later. The funeral was simple, cold, quick. His friends came. Some old colleagues. Andrew barely said 2 words during the service. His wife made herself the center of attention, sobbing loudest, even though she'd only known him 10 years. I kept my silence. I clutched the folded flag and the last photograph we had taken together. And I held the unopened letter in my coat pocket. I went to the bank the next morning. The woman at the front desk recognized me. Her name tag read, Melinda. Safe deposit box, she asked kindly. I nodded. Box 221? Under Eileen Carter. She verified my ID, handed me the key, and led me to the private room. I opened the box and placed the letter inside, along with the supplemental will, a USB stick with scanned mortgage documents, and a copy of our original title. I labeled it, in case of emergency. Then I locked it all away. I didn't want to think about it again. I didn't want to imagine a version of the world where my son would make me need it. But now that version had arrived. 3 days after the slap, I returned to the bank. Melinda wasn't there. A new clerk helped me, a young man who looked barely 20 but spoke with care. In need of access, he asked. Yes, I said. Box 221. He led me back to the same private room. When I opened the box, I hesitated. My hands didn't shake this time. I took out the letter first. The paper had yellowed slightly around the edges, but my husband's handwriting was still clear. Steady, familiar. To my dearest Eileen, it began. I read it again, even though I had it memorized. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if you're reading this because Andrew did what I hope he never would, then I am sorry. But you must know this. You are not powerless. You are not invisible. This house was yours as much as mine. Your hands built it. Your sacrifices paid for it. And no one, especially not our son, pays to erase that. A lump rose in my throat. There is a clause in the supplemental will. You know it. Use it if you must. Don't let guilt keep you silent. You've spent a lifetime being the glue for this family. Let this be the moment you stop holding it together for everyone else. He had signed it, dated it, October 14, 2020. Just weeks before his last hospitalization. Below the letter, the supplemental will confirmed everything. It named me as primary executor, custodian of the estate, and included a very specific clause. In the event that my son, Andrew Carter, physically or verbally abuses my wife, Eileen Carter, or attempts to evict her from the family home, all inheritance rights under this will shall be null and void. The estate shall then transfer to a designated trust, under Eileen's sole control. It was signed by 2 witnesses and notarized, legal, ironclad. I sat there in the quiet of the bank's vault room for a long time, breathing deeply. I hadn't wanted this power, but they had forced my hand. They had forgotten something crucial. Just because I had been quiet didn't mean I had been careless. I returned the documents to the box, took out the USB, and slid it into my purse. I would send the files to the lawyer later today, along with the recording I'd made the night of the slap, because that too I had preserved. His words were clear. This isn't your home anymore. Get out. It was all I needed. Proof and purpose. My husband had prepared me. Now I would prepare the reckoning. I arrived at the bank the very next morning. The snow had crusted into ice overnight, and the sidewalks were slick beneath my boots. But I walked carefully, deliberately. Not slowly, just with intent. I was not stumbling. I was not afraid. I was not broken. I was done being silent for the sake of peace. By 9:05 a.m., I was seated across from a loan officer in a small glass room. Her name tag read Jessica. She wore a burgundy blazer and had kind eyes. But I saw the flicker of curiosity in them when she read my request. "You'd like to terminate the automatic mortgage payments, Mrs. Carter?" "Yes," I said firmly. "And I'd like to review the full loan file, originals if possible." Jessica blinked. "We can prepare copies for you. Are you aware that this action may affect—" "I'm the co-borrower," I interrupted. "The loan is under both my late husband's name and mine. I have every right to withdraw authorization. You'll find my name on every page." She paused, tapping her keyboard. Then she nodded. "You're correct, and you are also listed as a co-owner on the property title." "I know," I said. "Please, prepare the documents." She excused herself briefly, and when she returned, she had a thick manila folder with my name neatly typed on the tab. I smiled faintly at the sight of it. 35 years of payments, statements, renewals, all accounted for. All mine to claim. I signed the revocation form. It took less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes to undo what they believed was permanent. Jessica handed me the file. "Is there anything else I can assist you with, Mrs. Carter?" "Yes," I said. "I'll be transferring the file to my lawyer later today. In the meantime, please flag the account. No one is to resume payments or renegotiate terms without my written consent." She nodded. "Of course. We'll place a lock on it." As I left the bank, the wind caught my coat. I pulled it tight around me, but inside, something warm flickered. Not anger, not revenge, just assurance, a quiet kind of strength. I had been preparing for this moment, even when I didn't realize it. At home, in the tiny one-room apartment I had taken on a monthly lease, I opened my laptop and plugged in the USB. The folder opened instantly, scanned copies of every critical document. My husband had been meticulous. He had labeled each file by date, by type, by legal reference. At the bottom, I added one more. The recording from the night Andrew slapped me. I had recorded it out of habit. After my husband's first stroke, I had developed the habit of recording important conversations, doctor's instructions, medication lists, even grocery orders. That night, I had been carrying the same small recorder in my coat pocket, intending to make a note to refill my prescription. Instead, it captured everything: his voice, the slap, the exact words. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." It was damning, clear, unmistakable. I uploaded the file to a secure drive and emailed it to the woman who had helped my husband draft the supplemental will, his former attorney. Subject: RE urgent. Activation of Clause 17B. I attach everything: the recording, the scanned will, the mortgage file. 5 minutes later my phone rang. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes." "This is Megan Dale. I received your email. I've reviewed everything." Her voice was calm, steady, professional. "I want you to know, I'm sorry for what happened. But more importantly, you've done everything right." I said nothing. Megan continued. "Clause 17B is valid. The audio recording verifies both verbal abuse and unlawful eviction. As per your husband's will, your son forfeits all inheritance rights, effective immediately. Can you act on this now?" "Yes. I'll file the notification today. We'll issue a cease-claim letter to your son's attorney and freeze all disbursement of estate assets. Do you have a place to stay?" "For now," I said. "I'd advise we schedule a formal review this week. But in the meantime, rest assured, you are no longer powerless." I thanked her, and I hung up. At night, I sat in the armchair by the window. The motel was modest, but the view was clean. No traffic, no yelling, no passive-aggressive sighs at dinner. Just silence, not the silence of being ignored, the silence of being free. I thought of my husband, how he had anticipated this, how he had worried. Not about death, but about what would come after. About me, left behind in the care of a son who forgot how to care. I had forgiven Andrew many times in life, for the missed birthdays, the short tempers, the little lies. I had told myself that was what mothers did. That love meant enduring, but love should never mean erasing yourself to keep the peace. I had done that for too long. Next day, Megan filed the necessary documents. The court issued a preliminary freeze on the estate. My son would be notified within 48 hours. At the same time, the bank processed my mortgage suspension. The system would flag any future payments as unauthorized. In the language of finance and law, I had become a wall. A legal, financial, and emotional wall that Andrew could no longer scale. I didn't call him. I didn't warn him. I simply acted, silently, precisely, because the most powerful thing a woman can do is remember everything they forgot she knew. The first time I saw it was through someone else's phone. I was at the pharmacy, waiting for my prescription, when the young woman behind the counter, who used to babysit my neighbor's twins, showed me a post. "Mrs. Carter, I didn't know you moved out. Your daughter-in-law's been posting about the renovations." I stared at the screen. There it was, a bright, staged photo of the living room where my husband and I had once danced on our 25th anniversary. Now stripped bare. New flooring. White and gold curtains. A cream leather sectional. Caption: "Fresh start. Goodbye to the darkness. Hello to our forever home." Darkness, that's what she called me. I nodded politely, took my bag, and walked back to my apartment without saying a word. But in my chest something began to settle. Not anger, not sadness. It was the strange, bitter taste of clarity. They truly believed they had won. They thought I had slinked away like an old coat they had finally donated. Outdated. No longer useful. They had no idea what was coming. The photos kept coming. Their kitchen remodel. Their new mattress. A chandelier in the hallway. Finally ours. The captions read, she posted a boomerang video of Andrew hanging a framed sign that said "Love lives here." They were nesting, boasting, inviting friends over for wine nights and charcuterie boards served on the dining table my husband built with his own hands. And through it all, not one message, not one call, not even a thank you for the decades I had poured into those walls. But then, exactly 31 days after I terminated the mortgage payments, the notice went out. The bank, efficient as always, sent a formal letter to the primary address on file. Subject: Default Notice, Carter Residence. Due to the co-borrower's revocation of payment authorization and failure to meet scheduled obligations, the mortgage is in breach of contract. If not resolved within 15 business days, the property will be marked for foreclosure and repossession. I didn't have to be there to see their faces, but I imagined it clearly. The silence as the envelope was opened. The disbelief turning to confusion, the frantic scan for a mistake, the quick turn to anger, then the dawning horror, because they didn't know, they had never read the fine print. They'd assumed I was just an old woman with no teeth left to bite, but I was the teeth. I was the signature. I was the name beside their dream, and now I was the reason it was unraveling. Andrew called that evening. His name appeared on my phone for the first time in over a month. For a moment, I considered letting it ring, but I wanted to hear it, just once. I answered. His voice was hoarse, not angry, yet just confused. Small. "Mom?" I said nothing. I don't understand. We got this letter. About the house. Something about a foreclosure? What's going on? Silence. Did you do something to the payments?" I waited 3 full seconds. Then I answered, slowly. "Yeah." Another pause. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Why would you do that? We're going to lose the house." I didn't respond. "Mom, please," he continued. And now he was crying. I could hear it, the heavy, uneven breath of a man who had only just realized he was fallible. "We didn't mean it. It was just, emotions were high after Dad's funeral. We weren't thinking. You weren't thinking." That's what they always said when they wanted to erase a choice they had already made. "Please," he whispered. "We can fix this. Just tell the bank it was a mistake. Restart the payments. We can talk. We can figure something out." I closed my eyes. This was the same voice that had ordered me out, that had stood silent while his wife stripped my life from the walls and painted over it in beige. "I can't," I said simply. "But it's your house too." "No," I interrupted, calm as glass. "You told me it wasn't. Remember?" Silence. I didn't wait for a reply. I pressed the red button and ended the call. Then I blocked his number. I sat by the window that night, listening to the hum of traffic outside. I drank a cup of chamomile tea and pulled the blanket over my lap. There was no satisfaction in hurting him, but there was peace in protecting myself. They had thought they'd won, but they never even knew the rules. I arrived late on purpose. The family meeting was already underway in the living room of my sister-in-law's house-neutral ground, as they called it. A long table had been set, coffee brewed, plates of lemon cookies laid out, like we were gathering for a garden party, rather than an execution. Andrew sat at the head of the table, next to his wife, who wore a pale pink blazer and a smile like porcelain, fragile and fake. When I opened the door, all conversations stopped. I didn't apologize for being late. I didn't greet anyone. I walked in with my tote bag over one shoulder, coat still on, boots wet with melting snow. I made no excuses and gave no explanations. I simply walked to the center of the room, set the tote down, and began laying out what I had brought. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each item placed carefully on the table: the original will, the supplemental will, the USB with the audio recording, a notarized copy of the mortgage agreement. No one said a word as I sat down across from Andrew. His eyes were already wide. His wife's fingers tightened around the edge of her chair. I folded my hands in my lap and looked to Megan, my lawyer, who had arrived 15 minutes before me, per my request. She stood. "Thank you everyone for coming," she said, her tone calm and professional. "I represent Mrs. Eileen Carter, widow of the late Mr. Thomas Carter. The purpose of this meeting is to formally disclose the legal updates pertaining to the estate of Mr. Carter." Andrew raised a hand, already flustered. "Wait, why is this happening now? I thought everything was all ready." Megan didn't blink. "Please allow me to finish." He shut his mouth. She picked up the supplemental will. "This document, signed and notarized in 2020, includes a clause, Clause 17B, that specifically states, should the heir, Andrew Carter, engage in any verbal abuse, physical harm, or forceful eviction of Mrs. Eileen Carter, all inheritance rights shall be immediately revoked." Gasps rippled through the room. A cousin whispered, "Eviction?" Megan nodded. "We have submitted audio evidence of Mr. Andrew Carter stating, quote, 'This isn't your home anymore. Get out.' This occurred within hours of Mr. Carter's funeral." Andrew stood suddenly, knocking his chair back. "That was taken out of context." Megan calmly reached into the bag and pulled out a small speaker. She pressed play. My son's voice filled the room, loud, clear, undeniable. "This isn't your home anymore. Get out." Then the sound of a slap, then silence. The room was frozen. Eyes flicked between me and him. No one moved. Andrew looked like he'd been punched in the gut. I stayed quiet. I didn't need to speak. The words had already spoken for me. Megan paused the recording. "As a result, under the legally binding terms of this will, Mr. Carter forfeits all claim to the estate. Full ownership of assets, including the family home, is transferred to Mrs. Eileen Carter." She turned to me. "You may choose to enforce this or seek negotiation. The law is entirely in your favor." I looked around the table. The aunts and uncles who had stayed silent when I was pushed out. The cousins who hadn't called. The same family who had always seen me as a background character in my own story. Now they saw me. Now they listened. Andrew sat back down, trembling. "Mom, please," he whispered. "I didn't mean it. I was grieving. I was upset. You know me. You know I wouldn't." "You did," I interrupted. My voice was soft, measured, unshakable. "You did it in front of your wife, in front of your father's body. And you didn't stop there. You changed the locks. You posted pictures of my kitchen, calling it your forever home. You knew what you were doing." His wife opened her mouth to speak, but Megan raised a hand. "This is not a debate. The documents are in order. The law is clear." Andrew buried his face in his hands. "I'm going to lose everything." I leaned forward just slightly. "You already did." He looked up at me, his eyes red and wet. "I'm your son. I was your mother," I replied. "And you treated me like a tenant." More silence. I stood, picked up my documents, slid them back into the tote. No one tried to stop me. I walked to the door. My boots clicked softly against the tile. I turned back only once. "I didn't come here for revenge," I said. "I came here with the truth. What you do with it next is up to you." Then I left. I didn't need to slam the door. The silence was enough. It was raining when they came. I heard the knock before I saw them. 3 soft taps, almost timid, followed by silence, then another, hesitant, as if they weren't sure if they should knock again or just leave. I opened the door slowly. Andrew was standing in the hallway of my apartment building, soaked through, rain dripping from his collar. His wife stood a step behind him, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. He looked older than I remembered. Older than a month should have made him. He wasn't wearing a coat. "Mom," he started. Voice cracking, I didn't say a word. I didn't know where else to go, he stammered. "They said the house, the foreclosure, the letter. I tried to get them to stop it, but they said I wasn't authorized, that the payments had been suspended, that I had no standing." "You don't," I said flatly. His face twisted. He fell to his knees, right there on the old carpet outside my door. "Please, Mom. I'm sorry. We're sorry." His wife bowed her head, but didn't kneel. She held her purse tight to her chest, her fingers clenched like claws. For the first time, she looked less like a woman in control, and more like someone who had been cornered by consequences. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "We both did. We let our pride get in the way. We thought we were doing what was best, but we were cruel. And we were wrong." Still, I didn't move. "Just, please, Mom. If you could talk to the bank, reinstate the mortgage, let us take over payments, we'll pay everything. We'll make it right. You can come home. Or not, whatever you want. Just, don't let us lose the house." I opened the door wider. He looked up, hope flickering. I didn't invite them in. Instead, I stepped past them into the hallway and reached into my purse. I pulled out a folded document in a clear sleeve. "This," I said, handing it to him, "is the deed transfer. As of yesterday, the house is no longer mine." He blinked, confused. "What?" "I sold it," I said. "To who?" his wife asked, her voice sharp with panic. "To the Elder Protection Foundation," I said. "They'll convert it into a transitional home for senior women who've been displaced. Women like me." Andrew's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You sold it?" he whispered. I nodded. "Cash buyer. Immediate transfer. It's done." "But," his hands trembled as he clutched the paper. "Why would you do that? It was our home." "No," I corrected. "It was never yours. It was built by me and your father, paid for by my sweat, my second jobs, my silence. You lived in it, you used it, but it wasn't yours." His wife finally spoke. "That was a mistake, okay? We got carried away. You could have talked to us." "I tried," I said. "Every time I was dismissed at dinner, every time you rolled your eyes when I spoke, every time you walked past me like I was furniture, I spoke plenty. You just didn't listen." Andrew looked at the floor. His shoulders shook. "I don't want your apology," I said. "I want your understanding." "I do understand," he said, tears falling freely now. "I was wrong." I looked at Himmy, son. My boy who once drew me crayon cards from Mother's Day, who once held my hand when crossing streets, who once ran into my arms after school. He had grown into a man who forgot where he came from, but now he was kneeling, and I had already stood up. "I forgive you," I said. "But I won't fix this for you." He nodded slowly, painfully. As I turned to go back inside, I said one last thing. "I didn't keep the house. I kept my peace." Then I closed the door, and for the first time in years I locked it, not to keep people out, but to keep peace in. I used a portion of the sale to buy a small cabin by a lake in Alaska, not the kind of place you'd find on a postcard. No fancy renovations, no hot tub, no Instagrammable corners, just 4 sturdy walls, a wood stove, and a view that made the silence feel like music. The first morning I woke there, I stood barefoot on the porch with a mug of coffee warming my hands and watched the mist rise off the water. It was so quiet I could hear my own breath. No locks, no voices behind closed doors, no one demanding I justify my existence. Just me and the trees, and a sky so wide it made the past look small. For the first time in decades, I slept through the night. No dreams of slammed doors, no voices shouting over memories, just sleep, just peace. I unpacked slow, one box at a time. I didn't bring much with me, just what mattered. A photo of my husband smiling in the garden, a crocheted blanket I made during his chemo days, the file folder, now thick with copies of my life, and a small, black digital recorder. It had captured the moment they tried to erase me. Now, it would help me reclaim the rest. I set up my laptop on a desk by the window, plugged in the recorder, and hit play. His voice echoed into the empty room again. But I didn't flinch this time. I had heard worse. I opened a blank document and began to write. I wrote about the hydrangeas we planted in '89. About the time the roof caved in from snow and we fixed it together, with borrowed ladders and prayer. About the day Andrew was born, and the first time he called me Mom. I didn't write to blame. I wrote to remember, to give myself back the years I had spent folding myself into corners for the sake of peace. That evening, I sent my first audio file to Grandma. True stories, true story. My story, not polished, not theatrical, just a voice that had waited too long. In the recording, I said, "These days, getting older made me invisible. But age is just silence collecting power. And silence doesn't mean surrender. It means preparation. I didn't lose a home. I reclaimed a world. So if you're listening, if you've ever been pushed out of the very life you helped build, know this, you are not alone, and you are not done." I didn't expect anyone to listen, but they did. Comments came in. Other women, other grandmothers, other silent rooms. I thought I was the only one. I've never heard anyone say what I've felt for years. Thank you for speaking what I couldn't. And slowly the silence became something else. A choir, a community, a quiet army of women who had nothing left to prove, but everything left to say. I still live in that cabin. I still wake with the light, drink my coffee slow, and let the peace linger. Sometimes I think of Andrew, of the house, of what could have been, but then I remember. What I lost was made of walls. What I gained was made of truth, and truth doesn't rot. It waits, and when it finally speaks, it doesn't shout, it just doesn't stop. If you've ever been hurt by the people who were supposed to protect you, remember, silence is not weakness. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, where the forgotten find their voice again.